Carl Jung's dark truth, why some women stay girls forever. What if growing up isn't guaranteed? What if becoming a woman, a true full-spectrum adult, isn't simply a matter of time, biology, or even education, but a radical inner transformation that many never complete? Carl Jung, one of the most provocative and controversial thinkers of the 20th century, believed that adulthood, real adulthood, is not something we inherit. It's something we earn. And the uncomfortable truth is this: some people, yes, even those who appear confident, successful, and outwardly mature, never actually grow up. They stay psychologically frozen, emotionally underdeveloped, stuck in patterns of childhood long after their bodies and bank accounts have grown. And while this applies to all genders, Jung had a particularly unsettling insight into why some women stay girls forever. Let's go straight into the fire. Jung believed that every person has an inner opposite, a hidden masculine side in women called the animus, and a hidden feminine side in men called the animi. And to grow into wholeness, we must confront and integrate this opposite. But here's where it gets dangerous. If a woman never confronts the darker aspects of herself, her shadow, her ego, her need to be adored without responsibility, she risks staying trapped in what Jung called the puella eternis, the eternal girl. She becomes a woman in form, but not in substance. And this is not about age, fashion, or lifestyle. It's about depth, psychological depth, emotional sovereignty. The capacity to face life as it is, not as a fairy tale, not as a performance, but as a fully accountable self.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more topics you love.
So ask yourself and be honest, have you ever known someone who seemed to float through life expecting to be rescued? Someone who avoids the hard truths, who flinches at responsibility, who seeks validation over transformation? Maybe you've seen it in others. Maybe you've felt it in yourself. That lingering desire to stay safe, to stay adored, to stay innocent at all costs. Jung warned us, this is not harmless. It's a psychological arrest. It halts growth. It keeps the soul in a cage, even when the body walks free. But how does this happen? It starts, often, with overprotection. When a girl is raised in a bubble shielded from consequences, praised for beauty without effort, rescued from challenge, she may unconsciously learn that her role is to be desirable, not to become someone. She learns to be liked, not to be real. She learns to be chosen, not to choose. And over time, this external orientation, this deep dependence on how others see her, calcifies. She becomes skilled at manipulation, at charm, at appearing perfect while avoiding the inner work that adult life demands. And the culture only reinforces this. Social media rewards surface. Movies worship youth and fantasy. Relationships become transactions of attention rather than unions of depth. But Jung pushes us deeper. He says that the puella is not just immature, she is terrified. Terrified of suffering, terrified of solitude, terrified of her own power. Because true maturity requires facing the inner abyss. It means grieving illusions. It means owning your darkness. It means letting the little girl die so that the woman can be born. And that is no small death. That is a psychological crucifixion. It means breaking the spell of eternal girlhood and stepping into the unknown. Let me ask you, are there parts of your life where you're still waiting to be saved? Are you still outsourcing your choices to others? Are you still playing small so you can be loved, rather than risking rejection to be true? If the answer is yes, you're not alone. Jung never blamed the puella. He saw her with compassion, but also with urgency. Because the longer we delay the journey inward, the more fragmented we become. We start living double lives. The outer adult masks the inner child. We chase relationships to avoid loneliness. We seek success to avoid self-worth. We perform roles instead of claiming our voice. And yet, the soul keeps whispering, it's time. Time to grow. Time to face yourself. Time to become. This video isn't an attack. It's a call, a wake-up, a mirror. Because the world doesn't need more polished girls pretending to be women. It needs whole women, fierce, wise, grounded, daring. Women who have walked through the fire of self-confrontation and emerged not perfect, but real. And if you're still here, still watching, still listening, then maybe, just maybe, that journey has already begun. The cult of innocence, how the world rewards women who never grow up. It's one thing for a person to remain psychologically young out of fear or trauma. But it's another, far more disturbing thing when the world begins to reward that immaturity. Carl Jung warned us that societies don't just shape individuals, they reflect them. And in many ways, modern culture has built an entire altar around the worship of the eternal girl. Not just in media or advertising, but in our values, our relationships, even our expectations of what femininity should look like. We've created a cult of innocence, and it thrives on keeping women small, delicate, adorable, and above all, undeveloped. Ask yourself, when does a woman receive the most attention in our culture? Is it when she's wise, powerful, and autonomous, or when she's youthful, unthreatening, and easy to consume? Look at pop culture. Look at the roles women are told to play. The ingenue, the princess, the manic pixie dream girl, and the influencer with the perfect aesthetic but no inner life. These aren't archetypes of empowerment, they're masks. Masks that keep women trapped in the image of the girl who never grows up. The girl who never says no. The girl who never asks for more. The girl who doesn't need space, or depth, or complexity, just attention. But here's the darker twist. This performance of innocence becomes addictive. Because it works, it gets likes, it gets praise, it gets safety. That's the trap. When you're rewarded for staying a girl, why would you risk becoming a woman? Why would you step into the unknown, where you might lose the very things that made you feel seen? Jung would say this is the ego's greatest seduction, to be adored without effort, adoration that doesn't demand growth, love that doesn't require truth. But what is the cost? The cost is the soul. Because when you are only loved for your innocence, you are not really loved. You're being consumed. You're being used as a symbol, a projection of someone else's fantasy, not a human in your own right. And what about men? This cult of innocence doesn't just damage women, it distorts men's psyches too. It teaches them to chase girls, not women, to seek validation through protectiveness, to feel powerful by being needed, not by being challenged. It creates codependent loops where neither person grows because both are serving each other's ego, not each other's evolution. Let me ask you something raw. Have you ever felt like you had to play dumb to be liked? Have you ever softened your truth to keep someone close? Have you ever felt afraid that becoming your full self would make you less lovable? These are not shallow questions. They cut to the core of the feminine wound in our time. A wound that says, I must remain small to be safe. I must remain innocent to be loved. And Jung's dark truth is this: until that wound is faced, until it is brought into the light, it will continue to rule from the shadows. It will shape relationships. It will sabotage careers. It will hollow out lives that could have been extraordinary. But here's where the power returns. Because you can break away from the cult of innocence. You can stop performing. You can stop being the girl everyone wants and start being the woman you are meant to become. It won't be easy. You'll lose people. You'll scare some. You'll be called too much, too intense, too independent. But you will gain something far more precious: your wholeness. And when a woman reclaims her wholeness, she becomes unstoppable. Not because she's perfect, but because she's real. And realness is rare. Realness is revolutionary. Realness doesn't need to be adored because it already belongs to itself. Shadow work and the death of the fantasy, the real path to womanhood. Let's go deeper now, beyond the surface, beyond performance, and into the subterranean world Jung called the shadow. If the puella eternis, the eternal girl, lives in the light of innocence, charm and pleasing others, then her shadow is buried in everything she refuses to see: her rage, her envy, and her power, her grief. And this is where the real journey begins. Because no one becomes a woman, truly becomes whole, without walking through the valley of her own shadow. Jung didn't just suggest shadow work, he believed it was essential to individuation, the process of becoming oneself. And for women trapped in girlhood, shadow work is the death of the fantasy and the birth of authenticity. Ask yourself this: what parts of yourself have you been told are too much? Too angry, too ambitious, too sexual, too direct, too emotional, too loud? Those are usually the very parts you've exiled to your shadow. You were taught explicitly or subtly that to be lovable, acceptable, or feminine, you had to cut yourself into pieces, hide your fire, smile through your boundaries, suppress your truth to keep others comfortable. But the soul doesn't forget. What you repress doesn't disappear, it festers. It waits, and then it leaks out in self-sabotage, passive aggression, anxiety, or toxic relationships. Jung's brilliance was in showing us that the shadow isn't evil, it's unlived life. It's all the energy you've buried to survive. Now, and until you turn around and face it, it will control you. You'll think you're choosing your life, but really your shadow is choosing it for you. And this is where the death of the fantasy comes in. Because the fantasy, the idea that you can stay soft, adored, untouched by pain, is seductive. It's a lie that whispers, if I'm good enough, sweet enough, pretty enough, I won't have to suffer. But womanhood demands suffering not as punishment, but as initiation. You must grieve, you must rage, you must descend into the places you were told not to look. That's where your power is buried. That's where your voice is waiting. That's where your wholeness begins. But most people don't want this. They want the illusion. And our culture feeds it: movies, brands, even pop psychology. Just love yourself. Positive vibes only. Be a queen. But Jung would call that spiritual bypassing. Because real self-love is brutal. It means looking at the parts of you that are jealous, manipulative, needy, ashamed, and not running away. Not justifying, not performing, facing them. So I'll ask you now, have you done that? Have you sat with your shadow? Have you been willing to feel the grief of all the roles you've played just to be accepted? Have you let the fantasy die? If you haven't, don't feel shame. Feel the call. because the death of the fantasy is not the end. It's the beginning. It's the moment you stop outsourcing your worth. It's the moment you stop trying to be a character in someone else's story. It's the moment you rise not as a girl who wants to be loved, but as a woman who knows who she is. And no, it's not glamorous. Shadow work is messy. It's ugly crying. It's uncomfortable truths. It's feeling like the floor has dropped out beneath you. But it's real. And once you taste that realness, the fake stuff, the games, the masks, the people-pleasing feels unbearable. This is not about rejecting femininity, but it's about reclaiming it. Reclaiming the wild, cyclical, emotional, fierce, intuitive force that lives beneath the performance. The woman who can hold both light and dark, who can nurture and destroy, who can love and also leave, who doesn't need to be rescued because she has rescued herself. That is the power that comes after the fantasy dies. But that is the woman who rises from the ashes of the girl. The woman who returns, leading without following, loving without losing self. There is a moment, after you've walked through the fire, after the girl has died and the shadows have been faced, when something extraordinary happens, you return, but not as who you were. You return as someone new, someone ancient, someone whole. Carl Jung understood this moment as the culmination of individuation, the integration of the self. It's when the fragmented parts of you, light and dark, soft and strong, child and elder, are no longer at war. You don't reject the girl you once were, but you no longer live from her. You carry her with you, but now you are the one walking. You are the one choosing. And in that return, you become what Jung called the mature feminine, a woman who leads without needing followers, who loves without losing herself, who stands alone without feeling abandoned. This woman doesn't perform. She embodies. She doesn't manipulate for attention, she radiates presence. She doesn't fear solitude, she cultivates it. And when she loves fiercely, but not desperately. Because now, love is a choice, not a survival strategy. She no longer seeks to be completed. She is already complete. But this return is not loud. It's not something you post about. It's not a highlight reel. It's quiet. It's in the way you breathe, the way you say no, the way you walk away from what once broke you. It's in the boundaries you hold and the truths you no longer betray. It's in the way you hold space for others, not from a need to be needed, but from a place of overflow. And the world notices. Not because you're trying to be seen, but because realness is magnetic. But you become a mirror. People will either rise to meet you or fall away. And that's the final letting go. The understanding that not everyone can come with you, that not everyone will understand, but you don't shrink for them anymore. You don't dim your light to make others comfortable, but you shine unapologetically. So let me ask you one final time, who are you without the girl? Who are you without the fantasy? Who are you when you stop seeking approval and start seeking truth? This is not a destination, it's a way of life. A commitment to yourself, again and again, to return to your voice, to your body, to your knowing, to your own sacred authority. Carl Jung didn't want us to stay broken. He wanted us to become whole. And that wholeness doesn't look like perfection. It looks like authenticity. It looks like courage. It looks like a woman who has remembered who she is and will never forget again. And so, the girl becomes the woman, not by force, not by timeline, but by fire. And from that fire, she returns not as a version of someone else's dream, but as the dreamer herself. The world doesn't need more girls pretending to be women. It needs you fully, fiercely, finally whole.